Wendy, for that introduction. And thank you for giving me another opportunity to talk about clinical trials, Optimal, who we are, and focus obviously on the trials that we have going for celiac disease. I don't have celiacs myself, so I can't even begin to imagine what the life of someone who does have celiacs is like. But by being on multiple trials dealing with the condition and trying to find some kind of exciting news have really opened my eyes to what the condition is about, and it's really fascinating. But also, I can understand why we do need something to help people with this condition. Yes, I have a sort of a long history working as an acute doctor at the hospital, running around. But I came to Optimal about 2 years ago and been involved in a lot of different trials in a lot of different therapeutic fields. And we do have a lot going on at the moment, not just celiacs, although it is a big area. But we have a lot of things like vaccine studies, dermatitis studies, asthma studies, and very popular obesity studies. So it's keeping us very busy and entertained, and I'm really enjoying my time here. The main clinic, the clinical site is at Grafton, so I'm currently at the Grafton site, and it's right next to the Auckland City Hospital, which is really good. But we do have another site up north in Rosedale, and they also conduct some of the celiac studies. So I'll just begin with, obviously, this is our mission statement. We exist to improve everyday lives for current and future patients in need, contributing to knowledge and providing outstanding research experiences. And I have to say, when I was studying medicine just here, actually, in the campus just across as well. And even when I was working as a doctor at Auckland City Hospital for many, many years, I didn't even realize that we had these fields and these sites around Auckland and also around New Zealand, dealing with all these different sort of clinical trials. And you read and you learn about the importance of clinical trials, but reading and learning, through reading is really not the same as talking to someone or just kind of experiencing that yourself. And so it's been a bit of an eye-opener, and yeah, like I said, it's keeping us very busy and entertained in a way, and very grateful for our participants who contribute their time and their effort, and they're just making sure that we have some sort of development going on. Yeah, that's kind of us. We are a leading ISO 9001 quality certified phase 1B to phase 3 research center based here in Auckland. So this is like a set of international standard on quality management to make sure that we maintain an efficient quality system. As mentioned before, we have lots of different therapeutic areas that we focus on and different trials going on, different phases of trials going on at a given time. We have a lot of people working here, obviously a team of doctors coming from lots of different backgrounds, as well as a team of nurses, a clinical staff, and study coordinators, and obviously the management team. We do see our patients quite often, definitely a lot more than the patients seeing their GP, and that's just the nature of clinical trials. But we do ask the patients to maintain that relationship with their GP, because ultimately they are in charge of their overall care. I'm really grateful that all the clinical trials that we conduct that gets through New Zealand goes through the Health and Disability Ethics Committee and Medsafe to make sure that our participants stay safe. The informed consent and the process of getting this informed consent is the most important step. This is a time that we dedicate solely to discuss what each trial is about, what's involved, what we expect from our participants, and what they should expect from us. And we give them basically all the information that they need to make that informed decision to participate in any of our trials. Like I said, this is the most important part, and so we spend 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, however long is needed to make sure that we are both on the same page and that people are feeling comfortable and reassured that they will remain safe throughout the whole process. So this is a 2020 data by New Zealanders for Health Research team, and there is actually a 2022 data available now, but and the percentages are very similar, the stats. The striking thing to note here is that lots of people want to contribute to research, but only about 8% have actually participated in a clinical trial. And I guess there's a sort of multifactorial reason why this is the case. And working towards that is something that we need to really focus on. So this is Kenneth. He recently finished one of the celiac studies with us. It was a short and sharp one, actually, about 18 weeks, where people took a tablet form medication before they had any kind of meal, and that the pathway of how that drug works is that it inhibits the enzyme that is responsible, the transglutaminase 2 enzyme that is responsible for starting a cascade of inflammatory reaction when someone with celiac is exposed to the gluten particle. And I think he enjoyed his time with us. We obviously saw him quite often to make sure he's safe, and he got through the trial and it didn't have any issues when he left us. And he is very excited to be part of any other future study coming up for celiac. So we do have a lot of participants who express interest, but sometimes some of these trials are very restricted in terms of who can participate. So it is a shame when people want to contribute so much, but they can't because they have another condition or they're on certain medications. But I think raising awareness is the key, and having people like Kenneth participating, we're very grateful. So these are the studies that we have at the moment. The first two, so the one that Kenneth did is the CC4. We have the CC13 that just started. Pfizer Celiac is an intravenous infusion medication, and that one started end of last year, and we are currently recruiting, and that's going quite well. We have one that's coming up in the next 2 to 3 months, and those the last three on that list. So Takeda, again, an infusion medication. Chugai is a subcutaneous medication, so that just kind of goes under the skin into the subcutaneous tissue instead of into the veins. And then the Forte Celiac is another intravenous drug. Except for the first one, the four that are up there, they target more of that sort of immune response cascade of reducing the inflammation that gets activated once you are exposed to gluten. So it's, I guess, a bit more stronger, a bit more potent, does carry a little bit more of that side effect and possible complications. But the key thing is to explain that fully and completely in understanding terms, so people acknowledge the risks and benefits, and also is comfortable being part of that. Unfortunately, all of these studies have gluten challenges in them. And again, I can't imagine how terrifying that sounds, giving gluten to someone who has celiac, knowing the symptom profile of what happens when they get exposed to gluten. And I can never really sugarcoat how that's going to go. But the key is to make sure that they are reassured that they will never do this alone in their home by themselves. That's not how it works. They will come to our clinic. They will have doctors and nurses and all the staff around and monitor them, observe them, take vital signs like blood pressure and heart rate, and just really look after them until everything goes well, hopefully. And if it doesn't, then we have all these other measures to help them get through that, like medications for symptom relief, for instance, like nausea or abdominal pain or headaches, which sometimes I know that people get. And if they have any ongoing issues, that they have all the ways to get in touch with us, come back for more reviews, etc. We have plenty of doctors and nurses and other staff around to be able to do that. And so I think it's giving that kind of reassurance of what actually would happen when they go through these days of gluten challenges is very important. Unfortunately, with celiac trials, it is very important to have gluten challenges, as you can imagine, to see if the drug is actually going to be effective. And the information that we get from those gluten challenges is hugely informative. And, it is something that is a big hurdle when we try to recruit people. But like I said, once again, that kind of reassurance, what happens step by step of what they, might go through during and even before and after, I think really helps when people want to know more about each trial. I can answer any questions about gluten challenges later on because it is a big topic. So each trial also has like a list of eligibility, what they call eligibility criteria, so who can actually join and take part. Most of the trials is adults, so people over the age of 18. There are some upper limit age ranges, but usually sort of 70, 80. They have to have some kind of proof of diagnosis, either through serology, like a blood test, or I guess the gold standard is the biopsy of the duodenum through an endoscopy, which I think most New Zealanders get done, when they get diagnosed with celiacs, and also they have to have gluten-free diet for at least 12 months or so. And each study is different in terms of how long people get involved for. Like I said, the one that we just finished, that's a short one. The Pfizer one that we have got going, that's a 52 weeks one, so that's a year long. You don't get treatment, you don't get the infusion of the drug that whole time. It actually is only for 1 week of infusion treatment, and then a follow-up phase with gluten challenges kind of spread out during that 52-week period. Some are shorter, some are even longer than a year. Depends on what the sponsor or the drug company want to achieve in terms of gathering information. And yeah, there are more things written there. But again, the key thing is that all the visits are done face-to-face. There'll be plenty of ways to get in touch with us, get hold of us, even after hours, overnight, if they need to. And everything and anything will get explained in detail if needed. So that's kind of like, I guess, celiac clinical trials in a nutshell. If you have any other questions or anything that you want to ask, Penny is our medical director. I'm the principal investigator in charge of all those celiac studies at Optimal, and I'm more than happy to answer any.
Are we able to get results of the trials?
Yes. So when we see them in our clinic, most of the trials will involve getting a blood test done for many different investigations, but the primary one is safety checks. And the safety checks involve looking at the functions of your liver, your kidneys, your pancreas, your blood cells. So there's a big list of all the things that we check quite routinely. And if you wanted all the copies of those blood tests, then yes, the only ones that we can't provide are the ones that are blinded, because all the trials are what they call double blinded. So I'm not going to know what the participant is on, and the participant is not going to know which sort of group that they, fall into, and it's a randomized trial. So except for those results, which is mainly the inflammatory markers and that kind of stuff, how much drug is in the body, how it gets excreted, that sort of thing, you will be able to get the other sort of safety blood ones if you wanted. Yeah, for sure. And after everything is over in terms of the sponsor collecting all the data that they need, and they have the data log and closing down of all the data information coming to them, and because they have enough, then they can analyze the information. And once they do that, there is always a chance that you can get a summary of their sort of prelim report, and see whether the drug was effective or not, or it's still, questionable or whatever. So yes, you can get all of those results if you wanted to.
Thanks, Tina. I've got another question here. I work full-time and would love to take part, but that doesn't seem feasible.
Yeah.
In fact, I did try to join recently, but the commitment was too onerous.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. And you know what, some of the gluten challenges, even if it's just a single dose one day, I know that people can, suffer for days afterwards with symptoms. And it, some of the visits do take half a day at least. So I can totally understand. And, that's not just for celiac trials, but a lot of the other trials that does require a lot of that sort of long observation period, and different timing, blood draws, and etc. There is obviously a room that gets dedicated to the participant when they have these long sort of half day or full day visits, and they can use that to work remotely, or if that's possible. Otherwise, it is difficult, and we unfortunately don't open over the weekends or after hours as such. So that is a hurdle that we are trying to figure out how to get around, but yeah, that is something that we don't really have a magic solution for. There is a bit of reimbursement and things that goes with the visits, like a stipend to appreciate people giving up their time and taking leave and things without pay. But sometimes it's just not enough to cover for all of that. So if that is the case, then, if we have anything, we always say if we have anything coming up that's more friendly towards people who are busy full time and can only do it certain, hours of the day or over the weekend, then we'll definitely keep, let them know and inform them. But otherwise, yeah, I can see that is a big issue.
Okay, I've got another question. Are these studies aimed at having medication that celiacs can eat a normal diet?
So I really want to say yes, but I think from some of the talks that I've heard given by some of the top celiac research professors and researchers around the world, is that unfortunately it might not be possible to achieve that sort of full no concern in the world. I can eat whatever I want and not have any symptoms. I think that goal is not achievable. I think the goal is to hopefully for people to not react so severely. So if you have a tiny exposure to gluten and end up having abdominal pain for 3 days, hopefully by having some kind of a medication to counteract that inflammation, hopefully you will just have a bit of minor abdo pain for 30 minutes. Does that kind of make sense, with a bit of exposure? I know a lot of people are asymptomatic for, a period of time, or have never really noticed until they eat a lot of gluten. But the thing is, the damage is still occurring microscopically inside. And so that is another thing that we want to help by reducing that inflammation, hopefully that damage and the complications that celiac can bring can be minimized. So obviously symptom is very debilitating. It affects quality of life in a major way. But we also have to think about the complications that happen with celiacs, with absorption, the osteoporosis, that sort of thing, the neuropathy, that sort of thing that can be more permanent and chronic later down the line.
Thanks, Tina. Another question. Did the enzyme breaking down glutenase trial work? Was it successful, and what exactly does it do?
Oh, yeah. So that was the Dr. Fox CC4 and the CC13 that is happening now. Same drug, slightly different dosages. And also, obviously, this one has a bit of gluten challenge in it. At the moment, it is in that phase of gathering data. So again, we don't really get to see much until that is closed and there's a prelim sort of finding that gets published. It's a medication that inhibits the enzyme, the key enzyme that's responsible in the intestines to start that whole inflammatory cascade when you're exposed to gluten or the gliadin protein. So by the theory is that by inhibiting that enzyme, you're not going to create that inflammation because you are stopping it at the level right at the beginning. That one you had to take before each meal, obviously before you get exposed to gluten. And the half-life of that drug is quite short, so you had to take it 3 times a day. From talking to our participants and seeing people go through the trial, variable. I guess a lot of the symptoms it can be from other causes, things like nausea, things like vomiting, headache, tiredness, and all our participants had quite active lives and they were involved in a lot of things. So, but it was good in a way because they kind of knew. I think most people know what they're like when they're exposed to gluten, so they could really kind of separate the sort of normal gluten tiredness to other tiredness. But even then, I think when people think that they're on, they could be on something that might help them, there is a thing called placebo effect. And, indeed, all these trials do have a placebo component, like placebo arm to it. So there is a chance that you might end up in the placebo group and get the placebo, which is basically an inactive sugar pill. So sadly, I actually don't know what they got either. So I can't tell, if someone goes, oh my God, I feel great. Like I ate a whole cake and I didn't react. I'm not sure, if that's because of the drug or because they could well be on placebo or on a different dose of the drug. So it's interesting, but also very hard for me to conclude from just talking to the participants, especially because the drug didn't really have that many side effects either. So you can't really tell much from how they presented at each visit. But hopefully that result will come out soon, and I would love to know. A lot of these celiac studies do tell you what each participant got once they have all the data that they need. And so it's really interesting to go through the list and be like, oh, this person had this, oh, this person had that. And that gets shared around with the participants as well. So yeah, hopefully that will happen soon with this, with the one we just had.
Another question here, Tina, and where can you access results of trials as a whole, and are they published continuously to keep people informed?
Yeah, so I think this question was asked during that AGM, and I think there was a email link that we gave out. I can do that again after this is over. Yep. I can send that link to you, Wendy. But it's a really good sort of summarized clinical trial, celiac trial site where they have a whole big list of each drug that's being studied currently at different phases of the trial. So you will see all the ones that I have listed on my slide, all those ones falling under phase 1 and phase 2 trials. You'll also see that phase 3, which is just before they get FDA approval. It's looking quite empty. So we're hoping that a lot of the phase 2 ones, which is a big list, hopefully will start to go into that phase 3 column. But if you click on each of the drugs, then it will give you like an outline and another link that you can go to find out more about what's the latest update on that particular study drug. So that's a really good website, but it's a worldwide one, so it's not specifically to Auckland or New Zealand and what's available here. But it just kind of gives you an idea of what's happening around the world. Yeah.
Great. And is there a post endoscopy done after trials?
Yeah, so I think out of the 5 that we have on that list, except one, they all have the endoscopy before and after. So before you start anything, during that sort of phase where we're trying to make sure that you're safe and all your organs are working okay and everything, is all ticked. During that phase, they do ask of you to, for you to go and get the endoscopy done. It's not done under general. It's done under local, and if it has to be done under general, then it's usually not, the person's not eligible. We have a very close relationship with the endoscopists at Green Lane Specialists, and they have worked with us for a long time. They know exactly what's required. If I needed an endoscopy, I'll definitely go to those guys. So we have a good sort of relationship, and everything gets organized with the times that is most, I guess, convenient to the participants. But we do ask them to, make sure you have someone who can drive you home, because you might be a little bit too sleepy afterwards, so it's not safe. The transport to the clinic and back can all be reimbursed if needed. So there's a lot of effort that goes into making sure that people feel comfortable getting those endoscopies done. And I guess that's also crucial, just like Gluten Challenge, to see what's happening in sort of that microscopic level.
Do you have any idea of timelines when the phase 3 will be completed, so that we know whether actually something is going to come on the market for people with celiac disease because of the trials?
Yeah, no, I mean, the sort of the average number of years that any drug of any kind gets approved from the beginning of development to FDA approval is like on average 10 years. I'm not sure what happened with the COVID vaccines, but usually it's about 10 years. Again, something like this, it's longer because each trial is pretty long, most of it, to see how long the benefit can carry on for. And you can imagine, the recruitment is slow, recruitment is difficult for many reasons. And so unlike some of those big, large vaccine trials where, they invent something and then it gets through the FDA pretty quickly, these kind of chronic condition ones with a lot of, things to think about and consider. And also, is this amount of benefit enough for people to start using this medication? And will that amount of benefit be actually, equal improvement in someone's, symptoms, someone's quality of life? So there's a different kind of approach to celiac studies compared to other ones. So I feel like it will be definitely longer than 10 years, but and that's why, we need to start. And we have started, doing things because people know that it will take a lot longer. But yeah.
Yeah. The weekly time involvement in participating in one of your trials, what's the average?
Yes, so at the beginning, it can be quite intense, mainly because, especially when you start the medication, because you could have some side effects, you could have a lot of other things that need to be monitored, but so it could be once every week, once every 2 weeks. The follow-ups are usually a bit more spaced apart. So the Pfizer celiac one that we have, for instance, that goes on for about 52 weeks. The first week when you get treatment, it's 3 infusions within 1 week. So day 1, day 4, day 7, you get your infusions in the clinic, and then you come back at day 15, which is 8 days after your last infusion, to do your first gluten challenge. That once that is over, we don't see you in our clinic in person if all is well for about 12 weeks, so 3 months. And then you come back at that 3-month period and have your next gluten challenge. Now, in between, obviously you're not, just kind of left alone. We call you, we contact you on a regular sort of scheduled basis to check on how you're doing, what your health is like. And and the participants constantly, get in touch with us to ask us questions, whether there's been any change in their health. I got a steroid injection into my shoulder, that sort of thing. And then we just have that sort of constant communication going. Some of the other trial, like the CC13 with the pill medication, that one is quite, I guess more regular, seeing them every sort of 2 or 3 weeks, and then until the end. So 12 weeks or 15 weeks of treatment. And that's, and then we have a little follow-up. After you stop all your treatment, we have a follow-up in about, 2 weeks time or 4 weeks time, just to make sure people are okay after they stop the medication, make sure they have no ongoing issues, make sure they don't have any, problems. And once that is the case, then obviously the trial is over for that one individual.
So the research that you're doing is with international sponsors.
Mhm.
So the data from New Zealand, is that put alongside the data from other countries when it's all analysed?
Yeah, so Australia, New Zealand, pretty big. Lots of overseas companies, especially Europe and like Germany and America, they really appreciate conducting studies here, because I guess we're not as resource constrained, and we have more, I guess, resource to conduct these studies within the clinical sites. So, and also they know that we have quite an efficient way of approving studies, clinical trials, and it just gets done quite not quickly but efficiently. So they do appreciate the sites that we have in New Zealand as well as Australia, and I guess celiac condition in general is more, I guess the awareness is greater than some of the other countries, especially like Asian countries. So, and the population, I guess, is more susceptible to having celiac disease. So, they do like collecting, and we are also quite multicultural, especially Auckland. So they do like collecting data from New Zealand, especially Auckland, and Australia. But it is a study that obviously gets conducted all around the world. That again, the CC3, that's a German company, and they started all around Europe way before they started here in Australia. And so yeah, it's and they collect all the data from all the different sites conducting this study.
Here's your last chance, everyone. If you've got another question you haven't asked yet, there's a question here about labels that are not really to do with research, but I can answer that. So the question is, now I can't find it. When it comes to food labeling, and it says may contain, is it safe to consume or leave those products out? So our medical advisory panel, Celiac New Zealand's medical advisory panel, recommendation is to avoid may contain statements, especially in the early stages of diagnosis. But if you really want to eat something that's got a may contain statement, the best idea is to talk to the manufacturer and ask them why they've got that may contain statement, because the risk of cross-contamination from gluten in a manufacturing plant where there aren't processes in place to prevent that cross-contamination can cause gluten to be in the product that you're not expecting it to be in. Hopefully that answers the question. Here's another question. Do any trials involve living at the clinic?
So we are more like an outpatient site, so we don't have any overnight stays or prolonged stays. There are clinical sites that do those sort of prolonged trials, and people stay in one site for days and overnight. Usually for sort of the initial phase 1 trials, but no, we don't do that. And most of the celiac trials don't really require people to be staying on site overnight. So yeah, definitely that's not what we do here, but there are places that they do stay, but I'm not sure if they do any celiac trials.
Right. There's questions about timing for a breakthrough, which I think you've already answered, to like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then around the affordability, well, that would all depend on what happened at the end of the trial, and then what PharmAct decides to fund and not. So
yeah, I mean, big questions, aren't they? They're all and pertinent questions. I mean, it's interesting because when I hear that still, EpiPen that people need to use when they have, when they're known to have anaphylaxis to, I don't know, bee stings or peanut or something, it's still not funded, for people, and it's a life-saving medication. So it's mind-blowing to hear something like that. And yes, the cost is going to be an issue because, as you can imagine, they are putting in so much money to get these trials going, and they're long trials, so they're spending a lot, within each trial. So I'm sure they want to gather some things after if their drug does go through the FDA approval. So it will be interesting to see that in the future. But yeah, very difficult to say
here's
what
one
New
last
Zealand will
question
do.
for you, Tina. Do trials look into the impact on mental health and gluten exposure?
Very good question, actually, because I think sometimes that component, of this condition is more than it impacts people more than anything else. We do have, so there's a lot of questionnaires and surveys involved with these trials, and symptom diaries, and I think that's all to work towards that goal of trying to improve people's quality of life, which definitely includes your, mental health and sort of psychological well-being. So definitely it looks into that. And that also gets sort of analyzed and published in those summaries. So yeah, definitely it's a component that people are well aware of, the sponsors.
And we've had a lot of members contribute to the recent health study that our medical advisory panel members put together, which talks a bit about quality of life as well. So hopefully those results will be, I mean, that's not a clinical trial, that's a health survey. So it's interesting. And we know, I mean, we get stories all the time about people and how they feel isolated and excluded and or a burden. I mean, we had a story the other day of a woman who wants to sit outside in her car and eat when she goes to parties.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want to be that person.
Yeah. No, I've heard similar. Very similar stories.
Sad. So the more we can do to raise awareness about making food safe until we've got these clinical solutions, at least we have a condition that can be treated with a non-medical treatment, which is a gluten-free diet and a strict gluten-free diet that's lifelong. So, but I think the clinical trials are, really important. And if anyone wants to participate, the they can contact you at Optimal Clinical
Yeah.
Trials and find out about the trials that are happening.
Yeah, definitely. Wendy, I was going to mention that, it's really difficult to explain this on paper, and trying to even explain what gluten challenges are about and that sort of thing. So I am more than happy to talk about any of these trials, and just, I don't know, trials in general, if people wanted it. I guess, expressing your interest can happen in a lot of different ways. And we have a team that gives the future, potential participants a call to explain what certain study is about. And you always have the chance to talk to like a medical doctor like myself, involved in the trial, to explain more in detail and answer any questions, because the team that does the phone calls, they're not medical, but they obviously have the details of each trial to talk about. But if you wanted more, if you're curious and wanted to know more, definitely I'm more than happy to answer any questions, and you can just email me or call Optimal and just ask around, that sort of thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate you taking the time to deliver this presentation again. And I'm sure everybody that joined in today got real value out of listening to you, Tina, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you very much.
No, amazing. No, thank you so much for letting me give the talk again. I hope it was helpful. But yeah, no, definitely more than happy to participate.